This decision marks a dangerous escalation and risks deepening the already catastrophic consequences for millions of Palestinians. Spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, August 2025. The year is 2025. The flickering hopes for a lasting ceasefire in Gaza have been extinguished. The negotiating tables are empty. In their place, a new strategy is emerging from the smoke, one of total military control. It's a plan that threatens to push Gaza and potentially the entire region past the point of no return. With the collapse of peace talks, the war has entered a terrifying new phase. It's no longer just a cycle of violence, it's an accelerating descent into scenarios that, until recently, were considered unthinkable. What we're witnessing is the failure not just of diplomacy, but of the very framework meant to protect human life in conflict. So, how did we get here? We need to understand the crisis across three critical dimensions. First, the humanitarian fallout, the weaponization of starvation, and the systematic destruction of a society. Second, the military escalations now underway, a strategy that risks a permanent occupation and a forever war. And finally, we have to look at the regional tinderbox and ask, what happens when the shockwaves of this conflict can no longer be contained? This is the grim reality of what happens when ceasefires fail. Act 1. The anatomy of a collapse. To understand Gaza in 2025 is to witness a total system failure. This isn't just a crisis, it's the methodical dismantling of the systems that keep people alive. It begins with the most fundamental need: food. The word famine is now an official, horrific reality. According to the world's leading hunger monitor, more than 500,000 people, nearly a quarter of Gaza's population, are enduring famine-like conditions. This isn't a metaphor for hunger. It's the technical definition of starvation. Recent data shows that more than 1 in 3 people have gone entire days without eating anything at all. For many, survival means a piece of bread and nothing more. This isn't a natural disaster. It's a man-made catastrophe. The infrastructure for food production has been annihilated. More than 86% of Gaza's cropland is damaged or inaccessible. Satellite imagery shows about 78% of all structures in the Gaza Strip have been damaged or destroyed, including bakeries, mills, and markets. The blockade continues, severely restricting humanitarian access. Aid convoys are delayed, denied, or caught in the crossfire. The simple act of seeking aid has become a life-threatening gamble. In a chilling statistic, the UN confirms that since late May 2025, over 1,600 Palestinians have been killed simply trying to get food for their families. The consequences are predictable and devastating. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly are dying from malnutrition and the diseases that prey on weakened bodies. The hospitals that could once treat them are now ruins themselves. Well over 90% of Gaza's 36 hospitals are damaged or destroyed, with only a handful remaining even partially functional, operating without adequate staff, electricity, or basic supplies. The healthcare system has collapsed just as the demand for it is at an impossible peak. Beyond hunger and disease is the destruction of the very concept of home. An estimated 90% of all homes have been damaged or destroyed. More than 2 million people, half of them children, are displaced, living in sprawling, overcrowded tent cities or the rubble of former neighborhoods. The United Nations now considers over 86% of Gaza's territory to be either a militarized zone or under evacuation orders, shrinking the livable space for 2.2 million people to a dangerously small area. This has created a generation adrift, haunted by trauma and a future that's been erased. That trauma is only compounded by the loss of the helpers. An unprecedented number of aid workers have been killed since the war began, over 500, including nearly 350 UN staff. It's a staggering toll that signals a breakdown of the last safety nets. When the people there to help become targets, it's a sign that the laws of war and of basic human decency have been abandoned. Act 2. The mechanics of escalation. With diplomacy abandoned, the logic of the battlefield has taken over. And on that battlefield, a perilous new strategy is unfolding. The plan for the full reoccupation of Gaza. After months of debate, Israel's Security Cabinet made it official policy in August 2025. The stated goals haven't changed: disarm Hamas, ensure it can't govern Gaza, and secure the release of all remaining hostages. But the method has shifted from targeted operations to total territorial control. This means sending ground troops into the few areas that haven't been completely destroyed, like parts of Gaza City, forcing yet another mass displacement of a population that has nowhere left to run. This raises a question that no one has a credible answer for. What comes next? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel doesn't want to permanently govern Gaza, but the plan itself creates a massive power vacuum. It calls for security control to be maintained until an alternative civil administration can be established, one that is explicitly not Hamas nor the existing Palestinian Authority. Right now, that alternative is a fiction. In its absence, Israel risks becoming the de facto ruler of a territory it has spent years devastating. This is the forever war scenario. A full-scale reoccupation would almost certainly ignite a long and bloody insurgency. Hamas, though weakened, has already shown it can adapt into a guerrilla force, and history teaches us that controlling territory doesn't eliminate resistance. It often fuels it. Israel could find itself mired in a costly occupation, policing a hostile population in a landscape of ruins with no clear way out. The financial burden of sustaining 2 million people in a shattered territory would be, as one expert put it, incomprehensible. This strategy isn't without its critics inside Israel. High-ranking military officials have reportedly voiced opposition, warning that a full occupation endangers the remaining hostages and creates immense operational challenges. Opposition leaders have called it a trap, suggesting it's exactly what Hamas wanted: for Israel to end up stuck in Gaza without a goal, in a useless occupation, the point of which no one understands. From the other side, the logic of resistance is just as entrenched. Hamas maintains it won't release the remaining hostages without a guaranteed permanent end to the war and a role for itself in post-war Gaza. For Israel, that's a non-starter. For Hamas, the hostages are the last powerful bargaining chip. As long as Israel occupies Palestinian land, the group has vowed it won't lay down its arms. So as Israel pushes deeper into Gaza to eradicate Hamas, it may be cementing the very conditions for a perpetual resistance, creating a truly ungovernable space. The military escalation, then, isn't a clear path to victory. It's a path to a more brutal, more entrenched, and potentially permanent state of conflict. A gamble that risks trading a war against an organization for a war against an entire population with no end in sight. Act 3, the point of no return? The shockwaves from Gaza are spreading, threatening to destabilize an already volatile region and exposing deep fractures in the international community. Regionally, the plan for an expanded Israeli occupation has sparked outrage. Egypt, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, nations vital for any long-term peace, have condemned the move. For months, there were talks of a day-after plan, maybe with an Arab-led force to provide security. But those plans all depended on an Israeli withdrawal, not a deeper occupation. Arab states have been clear. They won't act as a cleanup crew for a crisis they see as being fueled by Israel's actions, and they certainly won't govern Gaza under the watch of the Israeli military. This refusal leaves a dangerous void. Without a credible international or regional body to step in, the outcome defaults to either continued chaos or a long-term Israeli occupation. Both are recipes for more violence. The worsening humanitarian crisis and the images of a starving, displaced population also risk triggering a regional spillover, raising the possibility of drawing in other actors like Hezbollah in Lebanon into a wider, more devastating war. While the region holds its breath, the international response has been defined by paralysis. The UN Secretary-General has labeled Israel's plan a dangerous escalation that will cause massive destruction. The EU has warned the move breaches international law, and key allies like the UK, Germany, and Canada have signaled growing disapproval. This erosion of support risks turning Israel from a security partner into a pariah state in the eyes of many. But condemnation hasn't translated into action. The United Nations Security Council, the main body for enforcing international peace, remains deadlocked. The United States has repeatedly used its veto power to block resolutions calling for a permanent ceasefire, shielding Israel from binding international pressure. This has left the UN and its agencies as powerless observers, documenting violations of international law while being unable to stop them. We're left with a terrifying combination: a historic humanitarian catastrophe on the ground, a military strategy of open-ended occupation making a political solution nearly impossible, a regional powder keg with a rapidly shortening fuse, and an international community designed to prevent these exact disasters that's hamstrung by its own divisions. Conclusion and CTA. The failure of ceasefires in 2025 hasn't led back to the status quo. It has unleashed a cascade of worst-case scenarios, each feeding the other. The path forward isn't clear, and every potential outcome is filled with peril. One is a grinding, forever war, with Israel bogged down in a permanent insurgency in the ruins of Gaza. Another is a regional explosion, where the suffering ignites wider conflicts across the Middle East. And a third, perhaps the most insidious, is the normalization of the current horror. A world that just gets used to the images of famine and destruction, allowing a man-made disaster to become a permanent feature of our century. If you value this kind of in-depth, fact-based analysis that tries to make sense of our complex world, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications. It allows us to continue doing this work, and if you're interested in the historical context that led to this moment, we recommend you watch our previous video, Gaza Explained. The choices being made right now, in Tel Aviv, in Gaza, in Washington, and in capitals across the world, are actively shaping which of these futures becomes our reality. There are no easy answers here. There is only a deepening catastrophe and a series of decisions that will have consequences for generations to come. The question is no longer just how to get a ceasefire, but whether it's still possible to pull back from the point of no return.